Now that we have marched through March, let's spring into April and look at 10 new fantasy books coming out in the month of April that you should know about. First up on April 1st, we have A Drop of Corruption, a very bold date to release a new book, but that's the day. And this is the sequel to The Tainted Cup, which was one of my favorite books of last year. I had such a fun time with this, and I'm so excited for the sequel, A Drop of Corruption. This is a fantasy murder mystery with this sort of strange biomutagenic magic system, really fun, quirky characters, and really interesting world building with the setting. They have this huge wall that keeps out these leviathans that attack every wet season. It almost feels a little Attack on Titan-y. In the second adventure in the shadow of the Leviathan series, the eccentric detective Anna Delabra matches wits with a seemingly omniscient adversary in this brilliant biopunk fantasy mystery. An impossible crime has occurred. A treasury officer has disappeared into thin air, abducted from his quarters in a building whose entrances and exits are all sealed. The brilliant and mercurial investigator Anna Delabra and her assistant Dinios Cole have been called in to crack the case. Before long, Anna discovers that they are actually investigating a murder. Worse, the adversary seems to be able to pass through warded doors like a ghost, and can predict every one of Anna's moves, as though they can see the future. Anna's solved impossible cases before, but this time with stakes higher than ever, and the investigators seemingly a step behind their adversary at every turn. Has Anna finally met an enemy she can't defeat? What has me really interested about the synopsis for this is it's very Anna based. So book 1, The Tainted Cup, is from her assistant's perspective, and that is making me think it might be from Anna's perspective, which would be awesome. Anna is a very Sherlock Holmes-esque inspired quirky detective character. I did have someone in the comments say she's more like Nero, but I don't know enough about that character to tell you if that's right or wrong. But take from that what you will. She was a highlight of book 1, and I cannot wait to pick up book 2. Coming out on April 2nd, we have the relaunch of The Price of Power by Michael Mitchell. This was originally published a couple years ago. However, Michael has done a re-edit and also got a brand new cover, which is absolutely stunning, and is re-releasing it on the 2nd of April. As well as this, he is releasing the sequel later on in the year as well. I think June? Or July is the sequel? June. The second one is coming out in June. And I know for a fact that book 3 is also already being worked on, so it's sort of a fast release now with this rebrand of the first book. Prince Barodane could not hold back the darkness, not even in himself. He laid an innocent city in its grave and then died a hero. In his absence, war whispers across the land. Power-hungry Highborn dispatched spies and assassins to the shadows as they maneuver for the throne, while an even greater threat rises in the south. Monsters and cultists flock to the banners of a mad prophet determined to control reality and then shatter it. Destiny stalks 3 to the brink of oblivion. A dead prince who isn't dead. Barodane buried in his shameful past, in a stupor of drugs, drink and crime. Now he'd rather watch the world fall apart than wear the crown again. An orphan with hero's blood who's forced to make a harrowing choice, betray her country or sacrifice her first love. And a powerful seer who has no choice at all, her grandson must die. If any of them fails to pay the price, the cost will be the world's complete annihilation. This is a grimdark fantasy series, and at the bottom it does say it's perfect for fans of First Law, Game of Thrones, The 5 Warrior Angels, Kings of Paradise, and a land fit for heroes. And with book 2 on the near horizon, there's no better time to hop into this series. Also coming out on April 2nd, we have Blood of the Kami, which was on my most anticipated reads for the year, solely for that cover. I mean, look at that cover. It is absolutely stunning. But I will say the synopsis is also really, really cool. For centuries, the Yasakai have fought the corrupted souls who seek to plunge Japan into darkness. But the fragile balance is now shifting towards the forces of evil. Ren Fudo, a young soul hunter blessed with the blood of the Kami, receives a mission from Amaterasu Omikami. This simple errand is a spirit-given chance to pay off his debt to the Yasakai. But as he and his new companion, A shrine maiden possessed by a violent land kami. Take to the road. Ren remembers that spirits never give for nothing. The mission turns more dangerous and crucial with every step. The future of Japan now rests on their shoulders, and an army of yokai stand on their path. Like I said, my eyes have been on this book for quite a while. It's definitely on my TBR. It sounds really, really good. It sounds really interesting. And again, I can't go over the cover art. I know that's really superficial of me, but look at it. Coming out on April 3rd, we have Gifted and Talented by Olivia Blake. Where there's a will, there's a war. Thayer Wen, brilliant CEO of Renfair Magitech, is dead. As the father of modern technology, he leaves an incredible legacy. But which of his three telepathically and electrokinetically gifted children could inherit the Renfair throne? Meredith, head of her own profitable company, has recently cured mental illness. If only her journalist ex-boyfriend wasn't set on exposing what she really is, a total fraud. Arthur, second youngest congressman ever, wants to do everything right, except his wife might be leaving and he's losing his re-election campaign. And heading Renfair could relaunch his sinking ship. Ailey was a world-famous ballerina until a life-altering injury. Gaining the company might finally validate her worth. On the pipeline of gifted kid to clinically depressed adult, nobody wins. Yet as they gather to read his final words, which Ren will come out on top? Olivia Blake is the hugely popular author of Atlas 6. This sounds to kind of be in a very similar type of area with this kind of urban fantasy, kind of dark and twisty, very character based, and it does sound really, really good. On April 10th, we have The Book That Held Her Heart by Mark Lawrence. This is the third book in the Library trilogy, the first being The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I read The Book That Wouldn't Burn the year it came out, and it was really interesting. I love the ending, the twists and turns with the narrative, and just the reveals with the world building and just the whole setup made it an incredibly unique and interesting story. The trilogy follows two main characters. We have Lavira, who lives out in the dust, which is this grand expanse of desert. This is until her village is attacked and she's brought to the local town. There she gets a job in this grand, massive library. We also follow a second character called Evar, who is stuck inside this library in a section of it that seems to be blocked off from every other part of the library, and he lives there with a couple of his siblings and also this strange, almost animatronic like being that kind of takes care of them. So it's kind of this interweaving story between these two characters in this really cool library. It's such a unique and interesting story that really leans into themes of knowledge and power and this idea of progression as a society. And I don't want to talk too much about it because half the fun of this story is just kind of uncovering a lot of this narrative that's very complex and interweaving, we shall say. And there's no better time to start it with Book 3 coming out on April 10th. On April 15th, we have A Palace Near the Wind. Liu Lifeng is the eldest princess of the Feng royalty and, bound by duty and tradition, the next bride to the human king. With their bark faces, arms of braided branches and hair of needle threads, the Feng people live within nature, nurtured by the land, but they exist under the constant threat of human expansion, and the negotiation of bride wealth is the only way to stop or at least delay the destruction of their home. Come her wedding day, Liu Feng plans to kill the king and finally put an end to the marriages. Trapped in the great human palace in the run-up to the union, Lei Feng begins to uncover the truth about her people's origins and realizes they will never be safe from humans. So she must learn to let go of duty and tradition, choose her allies carefully, and risk the unknown in order to free her family and shape her own fate. Now this is a sci-fantasy novella, and it's really good. I've not quite finished it, but I have been reading an early copy of it, and I'm having a really good time. So I will have my final thoughts out before it comes out on the 15th. My next wrap-up video for the quarter, I think, is coming out next week. So you'll be able to get my full thoughts there. However, I'm really enjoying this so far. Coming out on April 17th, we have The Raven Scholar. She might win the throne. She might destroy an empire. Either way, it begins with murder. After 24 years on the throne, it is time for Bersun, the brusque Emperor of Oran, to bring his reign to an end. In the dizzying heat of midsummer, 7 contenders will compete to replace him. Trained at rival monasteries, each contender is inspired by a sacred animal: fox, raven, tiger, ox, bear, monkey, and hound. An 8th, the dragon proxy, will be revealed only once the trials have begun. 8 exceptional warriors, thinkers, strategists, the best of the best. Then one of them is murdered. It falls to the brilliant but idiosyncratic Nima Kra to investigate. But as she hunts for a killer, darker forces are gathering. If Nima succeeds, she could win the throne, whether she wants it or not. But if she fails, she will sentence herself to death and set into motion a sequence of events that could doom an empire. This is a really cool play on kind of the trials and competition trope. It's a really popular kind of setup for books, but this idea that is less about the competition and more about this murder that happens to one of the contenders, it's really, really cool. And I do know that one of my friends, Esme, has read it and she really liked it, and in Esme we trust. I trust her opinion. And it was her book of the month for last month when she read it. So this is definitely one I have on my radar. On April 29th, we have The Crimson Fire by Abel Montero. Abel is awesome, incredibly talented individual, and this is his debut into the English fantasy novel space. But he also does have a booktube channel that's completely in English that you should definitely go check out. Gods walk among men, but the empire they have forged is on the brink of collapse. As whispers of rebellion grow louder, Ensign Andic uncovers a sinister plot that threatens the very foundation of the divine reign. Every discovery pulls him deeper into a dangerous web, forcing him to confront truths that could shatter his unshakable loyalty. On the other side, Eshfen, a ruthless rebel with a cunning mind and a thirst for chaos, strokes the flames of dissent. He sows doubt in the hearts of the people, challenging the gods' right to rule, and sparking a dangerous game of shadows that could bring down empires. Caught between loyalty and self-discovery, Shadi, a young noblewoman, grapples with the weight of her family honor and the desire for independence. With her fiercely devoted bodyguard Darjan by her side, Shadi must navigate the treacherous waters of loyalty, love, and betrayal, where every choice could be their last. As destinies intertwine and alliances shift, these 4 must face the gods themselves, or watch the world they know crumble to ashes. I'm always a sucker for fantasy books that have the gods as physical beings in the world. I always really like that as a setup in books. This just sounds like some good epic fantasy fun, and I'm really excited to check this one out. He says, TBR overflowingly. Next on up, we have The Floating World. Now, I hadn't heard of this book until I was doing research into books for this video, and look at that US cover. That's absolutely stunning. The UK cover is cool too, but I really, really like that US cover. That's absolutely stunning. What I will say is there seems to be some discrepancies between the release date. From what I've gathered, I thought it was April 29th, but there are some listings pointing it to be in May. So I'm not quite sure. It could be April 29th. It might be pushed back till May, but I'm going to talk about it in this video. And anything with the comp title of Final Fantasy is a book I'm going to mention because this sounds really cool. And I can definitely see the Final Fantasy kind of influence here because it follows a character called Sunho who lives in this land of perpetual darkness. However, he's an ex-soldier that can remember little of his life from before 2 years ago, which sounds very like another ex-soldier that might have some memory issues in the Final Fantasy franchise. So that's really cool. And he is hunting down a girl who wields silver light. Whereas Ren is this girl who controls silver light, and she is a spirited and cheerful acrobat traveling with her adoptive family performing at villages, which again just sounds really cool and very Final Fantasy. And these 2 points of view interweave, and there is some romantic elements as well. So this is definitely, romance is something that I'm very careful with because there's so much of it that I just not particularly interested in. However, this one sounds right up my street because I do like romance when it's done well. I'm just kind of picky with it, and I don't want it to be necessarily the core focus of the narrative. However, it just sounds like a Final Fantasy story, and that I want it. Okay? I don't have to explain it, I just want it. And last but was certainly not least, on April 29th, we have Abeni and the Kingdom of Gold. This is the sequel to Abeni's Song by P. Djeli Clark. Now, I love P. Djeli Clark's work, especially Master of Jin and his short stories and novellas in that world. And this is a completely separate world and is more of a middle grade series. However, I love his writing, and I've not checked out the first book, but I'm really interested in maybe trying this series out. Because this is a sequel, we will go over the synopsis for book 1, and then you'll know if you want to go on to book 2. On the day of the harvest festival, the old woman who lives in the forest appears in Abeni's village with a terrible message. You ignored my warnings. It's too late to run. They are coming. Warriors with burning blades storm the village. A man with a cursed flute plays an impossibly alluring song, and everyone Abeni has ever known and loved is captured and marched toward far-off ghost ships, set for even more distant lands. But not Abeni. Abeni is magically whisked away by the old woman. In the forest, Abeni begins her unwanted, magical apprenticeship, her journey to escape the witch, and her impossible mission to bring her people home. Music, magic, and an African-inspired influence. Sounds good to me. And over on the Discord, we will be reading The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, which I'm super excited about because I've had this on my TBR for far too long, and I've heard really, really good things about this, so I'm really glad that this was the one that was voted in. So if you want to join that, you can join the Discord, link in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. Outro.